I joined the humans in battle, and understood why the entire galaxy fears them. Part 1. Taemin stood in the command center of the Veltharian High Fleet, his forearms clasped behind his back in the traditional pose of respect. The holographic display before him showed a map of the galaxy, with red markers spreading like a disease across multiple sectors. Each red marker represented a world consumed by the Ravager swarms. 3 colonies in 2 months, High Commander Kalseth said, his voice heavy with anger. Our finest warriors, our most advanced weapons, and still we fall back. The Ravagers adapt too quickly. They learn our tactics. They counter our strategies. Taemin had fought the Ravagers twice. Both times his unit had barely escaped with their lives. The Ravagers were like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They consumed everything in their path, turning entire planets into barren rocks. They moved in massive swarms, billions of creatures acting as one mind. Traditional warfare meant nothing to them. We need allies, another commander said. The room fell silent. The Veltharians had never needed allies before. They were the strongest warrior race in their sector. The idea of asking for help burned like acid in their proud hearts. The humans, Kalseth said quietly. They have repelled 4 Ravager attacks. Not just survived, they won, completely destroyed the Ravager forces. Taemin felt his spine ridges rise in confusion. Humans, those soft, weak creatures, they barely had faster than light travel. Their ships were old and poorly armed. Their bodies were fragile, with only 2 arms and no natural armor. They stood barely 6 feet tall while Veltharians towered at 9 feet. With respect, Commander, Taemin said, the humans must have some secret weapon. Advanced technology they're hiding. There's no other explanation. Kalseth's eyes fixed on him. That's why you're going to them, Taemin. You will join their military forces as an observer. Live with them. Fight beside them. Learn their secrets. We need to know how they defeat the Ravagers. 2 days later, Taemin stood in the docking bay of the human warship Indomitable. His first impression was disappointment. The ship was old. The hull showed repair marks from dozens of battles. The weapons looked adequate at best. Human crew members walked past him, barely giving him a second glance. They wore simple uniforms, carried basic equipment, and showed none of the rigid military discipline he expected. A human woman approached him. She was small, maybe 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair tied back in a simple style. I'm Captain Jiwoo, she said, extending her hand. Welcome aboard the Indomitable. Taemin looked at her hand, confused by the gesture. On his world, touching strangers was considered aggressive, but he had studied human customs. This was called a handshake, a greeting. He reached out with one of his 4 hands and carefully took hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Thank you for having me, Captain, he said in standard Galactic. His translator chip converted his words into something humans could understand. Just Jiwoo is fine when we're not in combat, she said with a smile. Let me show you around. The ship was functional but worn. Every surface showed signs of use and repair. Human crew members were everywhere, working on systems, checking equipment, talking in small groups. They seemed too casual, too relaxed. Where was the military order? Where was the discipline? This is Lieutenant Hye-jin, Jiwoo said, introducing him to another human woman. She's our tactical officer. Hye-jin nodded at him. I've read about your people. Impressive combat record. We're glad to have you with us. I'm here to observe and learn, Taemin said carefully. My people want to understand how humans fight the Ravagers so effectively. Hye-jin and Jiwoo exchanged a look. Something passed between them that Taemin couldn't read. You'll see soon enough, Jiwoo said. We have patrol duty starting tomorrow. That evening, Taemin met Private Dong-hyun in the mess hall. The young human soldier was eating something that smelled strange but not unpleasant. He waved Taemin over with enthusiasm. You're the Veltharian observer, right? That's so cool. I've never met a Veltharian before. Is it true you guys can fight with all 4 arms at once? Taemin sat down, his large frame making the human chair seem tiny. Yes, we train from childhood to use all 4 arms independently in combat. Amazing, Dong-hyun said, his eyes wide. We only have 2 arms, so we have to be creative. How do your people fight? Taemin asked. Your weapons are not the most advanced. Your ships are old. Your bodies are fragile compared to most warrior races. Yet you defeat the Ravagers. You must have some secret technology. Dong-hyun laughed. Secret technology? Man, we barely keep our ships running. Half our equipment is older than I am. We just make do with what we have, then how do you win? The young human's smile faded. His eyes took on a distant look. We don't give up ever. It's not in our nature. My grandfather used to say that humans are too stupid to know when we're beaten, so we just keep fighting until we win. Taemin didn't understand. This made no sense. Warfare was about strength, technology, tactics, not stubbornness. The next morning, Taemin reported to the bridge for patrol duty. The bridge was small and cramped compared to Veltharian ships. Human crew members sat at various stations, monitoring screens and checking systems. Everything seemed too informal, too relaxed. We're entering the patrol zone, Hyejin announced. All systems normal. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Taemin watched the humans work. They were efficient but casual. They joked with each other. They drank something called coffee constantly. One crew member was humming a tune while checking weapon systems. Then the sensors beeped. Contact, Hyejin said, her voice suddenly sharp. 3 Ravager scouts, small group. Distance 40,000 kilometers. Taemin felt his combat instincts surge. Finally, battle! The Veltharian way was simple. Detect the enemy, close with the enemy, destroy the enemy. Honor demanded direct confrontation, but Jiwoo didn't give the order to attack. Tactical withdrawal, she said calmly. Reduce power signatures. I want full passive sensors only. Hyejin, track those scouts. I want to know where they're going and what they're doing. Captain, Taemin said confused. We should attack. They're only scouts. We can destroy them easily. Jiwoo turned to look at him. Her face was calm, but her eyes were calculating. We could? But then what? More Ravagers come to investigate. We fight them. Maybe we win, maybe we don't. Either way, we learn nothing. I don't understand. You will, she said simply. For 3 days, the Indomitable followed the Ravager scouts. The humans tracked every movement, recorded every communication, mapped every pattern. Taemin grew more frustrated each day. This was cowardice. Warriors didn't hide and watch. They fought. On the 3rd night, he confronted Donghyun in the mess hall. Your people are afraid to fight. You run from 3 scouts. Donghyun looked up from his food. His expression was patient. We're not afraid. We're being smart. See, on Earth, we had thousands of years of war. Humans fighting humans. We learned something important. Winning one battle means nothing if you lose the war. What war? These are just scouts. Exactly. Just scouts. But where are they going? What are they reporting? If we kill them, we learn nothing. If we watch them, we might find their base, their fleet, their plans. Then we can destroy not just 3 scouts, but everything. Taemin sat down heavily. This is not honorable combat. No, Donghyun agreed. It's not. But it's effective. And when you're facing extinction, you don't worry about honor. You worry about survival. Before Taemin could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. The calm atmosphere vanished instantly. All hands to battle stations. Jiwoo's voice came over the intercom. We have a situation. Colony Haven is under attack. Ravager Warfleet. We're the closest ship. Taemin rushed to the bridge. The holographic display showed a terrible sight. Colony Haven, a peaceful agricultural world, was surrounded by Ravager ships, hundreds of them. How long until reinforcements arrive? Hyejin asked. 6 hours, someone reported. Jiwoo stared at the display. Her jaw was set. The colony won't last 6 hours. Helm, set course for Colony Haven, maximum speed. Captain, Hyejin said quietly. There are too many. Even with the other patrol ships, we're outnumbered 5 to 1. Jiwoo's eyes were hard as steel. I know the odds, Lieutenant. Set the course. Taemin watched as the humans moved with sudden precision. The casual atmosphere was gone. Every crew member moved with purpose. They checked weapons, prepared systems, sent quick messages to loved ones. This was it. He was about to see how humans really fought, and something in their eyes made his blood run cold. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Colony Haven system. Taemin stared at the tactical display and his heart sank. The situation was worse than the initial report suggested. Ravager ships filled the space around the colony. Their organic vessels pulsed with sickly green light. Swarms of smaller craft moved like schools of fish, attacking the colony's orbital defense platforms. On the planet's surface, fires burned across 3 continents. Status report, Jiwoo said calmly, as if she was asking about the weather. 300 Ravager vessels confirmed, Hyejin replied. Multiple classes. We're detecting at least 5 heavy cruisers. The colony's shields are at 30% and falling. They have maybe 20 minutes before complete failure. Our forces? The Indomitable plus 3 other patrol ships arrived 2 minutes ago. Total, 4 ships against 300. The odds were impossible. Any sane military commander would wait for reinforcements. Even suicide missions required some chance of success. This was just death. Taemin expected Jiwoo to order a defensive position. They could harass the Ravagers, draw some ships away from the colony, buy time for the civilians to evacuate. That was the logical choice. Open a channel to all ships, Jiwoo said. This is Captain Jiwoo of the Indomitable. We're not losing this colony. We're not losing these people. All ships attack formation Zeta 9. Weapons free. Protocol Total War. Protocol Total War. Taemin had never heard that term, but he saw the effect on the bridge crew. Every human straightened. Their faces went hard. Some whispered quiet prayers. Others simply nodded. Captain, Taemin said, this is madness. We cannot win this fight. Jiwoo turned to him. Her eyes were calm but intense. Observer Taemin, you asked how humans fight. Now you'll see. You can stay on the bridge or go to the observation pod. Your choice. I'll stay, Taemin said. If he was going to die, he wanted to see what made humans so willing to embrace death. The 4 human ships accelerated toward the Ravager fleet. Taemin watched in horror as they charged directly at the enemy. No fancy maneuvers, no attempt at strategy, just a straight attack run. But then something strange happened. The Indomitable didn't fire its weapons. Neither did the other ships. They just flew straight into the Ravager formation, weaving between the enemy vessels. Energy blasts and bioweapons filled the space around them, but the human ships dodged with impossible precision. What are you doing? Taemin asked. Getting them angry, Jiwoo said with a cold smile. Jin, are they taking the bait? Affirmative. 60% of the Ravager fleet is breaking off from the colony. They're pursuing us. Good, Helm, take us into the debris field. Full speed. The Indomitable dove toward a field of destroyed ships and broken asteroids. The Ravager ships followed, firing constantly. The human ship took several hits. Damage reports came in from all sections. Shields at 40%, someone called out. Hull breach on deck 7. Weapons array 2 is offline. But Jiwoo's expression never changed. She watched the tactical display like a chess player studying the board. Now, she said quietly. The Indomitable spun around. All 3 other human ships did the same. They faced the pursuing Ravager fleet and opened fire, but they weren't aiming at the ships. They were targeting the debris field around them. Explosions ripped through the field. Chunks of metal and rock became missiles tearing into the Ravager formation. The enemy ships tried to dodge, but they were going too fast. Dozens of Ravager vessels were destroyed in seconds. Phase 2, Jiwoo said. Release the packages. Taemin had no idea what packages meant. Then he saw them on the display. The human ships had been dropping something as they flew through the debris field. Hundreds of small objects, too small to be detected as threats. Magnetic mines armed and activated, Hyojin reported. The mines attached themselves to Ravager ships and detonated. The enemy formation broke apart in chaos. All ships concentrated fire on the heavy cruisers, Jiwoo ordered. The 4 human ships worked together with perfect coordination. They didn't spread their fire. They focused everything on one Ravager cruiser at a time. The first heavy cruiser lasted 15 seconds under the combined assault. The second lasted 12. But the Ravagers were adapting. They regrouped and surrounded the human ships. Energy weapons and bioplasma filled the space. The Indomitable shook under repeated impacts. Shields down to 10%, a crew member reported. His voice steady despite the fear Taemin could see in his eyes. Direct hit on the port side. We've lost weapon arrays 4 and 5. Fire and engineering. Damage control teams responding. The ship was dying around them, but the humans kept fighting. Taemin saw Donghyun at a weapon station, firing with calm precision even as sparks rained down around him. Then one of the other human ships, the Defiant, took a catastrophic hit. Its entire starboard side exploded. The ship began to spin out of control. Defiant is evacuating crew, Hyojin reported. Their reactor is critical. They have maybe 3 minutes before it breaches. Tell them to get everyone off, Jiwoo said. Captain Song says he's staying aboard. He's plotting a collision course with the largest Ravager cruiser. Taemin felt sick. The human captain was going to ram his dying ship into the enemy. It was brave but wasteful. One ship for one enemy cruiser was not a good trade. But then Captain Song did something unexpected. He aimed his ship not at the Ravager cruiser, but at its engines. The Defiant, moving at full speed despite being a flaming wreck, slammed into the rear of the massive Ravager vessel. The reactor breach came at the moment of impact. The explosion was like a small sun being born. The Ravager cruiser was vaporized. But more than that, the explosion created a shock wave that tore through the Ravager formation, destroying another 20 ships. That was for Earth, someone shouted on the bridge. The remaining Ravagers seemed confused. They had never faced an enemy that deliberately destroyed themselves to take out more enemies. They hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. "Press the attack!" Jiwoo ordered. "Don't give them time to think." The 3 remaining human ships dove back into the fight. Taemin realized what he was seeing. The humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to hurt the enemy as much as possible before they died. Every action was calculated for maximum damage. An explosion rocked the Indomitable. Taemin was thrown from his seat. Alarms screamed. The bridge filled with smoke. "Hull breach on the bridge," someone screamed. "We're losing atmosphere." Taemin saw a crack forming in the viewport. In seconds, they would all be sucked into space. He activated his personal shield, knowing it would only buy him a few minutes. But the humans didn't activate shields. They grabbed tools and emergency patches. While the air screamed out through the crack, while the ship shook and burned around them, they worked to seal the breach. Donghyun appeared from somewhere, dragging a heavy metal plate. He slammed it over the crack and began welding it in place. The young human wasn't wearing any protective gear. His hands were burning from the heat. But he didn't stop. "Got it," he shouted as the last weld sealed. The air stopped escaping. "Good work, Private," Jiwoo said, already turning back to the tactical display. Medical team to the bridge. "Hygiene, damage report. Multiple hull breaches across all decks. We've lost 60% of our weapons. Shields are gone. Life support is failing in sections 4 through 9, and we're leaking reactor coolant. How long can we stay in the fight? Best estimate? 10 minutes. Then the reactor goes critical and we either evacuate or die." Taemin looked at the tactical display. They had destroyed maybe 100 Ravager ships, but 200 remained. The colony shields were failing. This was the end. "Captain," Taemin said, "you've done all you can. Order evacuation. Die with honor." Jiwoo looked at him with eyes that burned with cold fire. "We don't die with honor, observer. We die making sure the enemy remembers us. Hyjin, how many colony transports have launched?" "All of them. 2,000 civilian ships are running for the jump point. They'll be clear in 8 minutes. Then we have 8 minutes to keep the Ravagers busy. All power to engines. We're going in close." "Captain," Hyjin said, confused. "If our reactor's going to blow anyway, let's make it count. Set collision course for the largest concentration of enemy ships. Full speed." Understanding dawned on Taemin. The humans were going to do what Captain Song did. They were going to turn their dying ship into a weapon. "All non-essential personnel to escape pods," Jiwoo ordered. "Anyone who wants to stay, report to battle stations. This is voluntary. I won't order anyone to die with me." Nobody left the bridge. "Well," Jiwoo said with a tired smile, "looks like we're all stubborn fools. Helm, take us in." The Indomitable, burning and broken, accelerated toward the heart of the Ravager fleet. Taemin gripped his seat, waiting for death. But he noticed something. The humans weren't afraid. They were singing. Some old song from their world about going down fighting. And then, just as they were about to reach the Ravager formation, Hyejin shouted, "New contacts! Multiple jump signatures!" Feltharian warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Dozens of them. The reinforcements had arrived early. "All ships fire at will," came the Veltharian commander's voice. The Ravagers, caught between the humans and the fresh Veltharian fleet. The Indomitable limped into the repair dock 3 days after the Battle of Colony Haven. Taemin stood in the landing bay watching human engineers swarm over the damaged ship. They moved with practiced efficiency, already beginning repairs before the ship had fully powered down. Donghyun walked up beside him, his hands wrapped in medical bandages from the welding burns. The young human looked tired but alive. "Come on," Donghyun said. "Captain wants all crew at the memorial service." "Memorial service?" "For the crew of the Defiant. And our own dead. We lost 37 people in that fight." Taemin followed Dong-hyun to a large assembly area. Hundreds of humans stood in neat rows wearing dress uniforms. At the front, holographic images floated in the air. Each image showed a human face. Names were written beneath them. Captain Jiwoo stood at a podium. Her dress uniform was crisp and clean, completely different from the smoke-stained combat gear she had worn during the battle. But her eyes still held that same hard look. "We gather today to remember the fallen," she began. "Not as casualties or statistics, but as people. As friends. As family." She began reading names. For each name, she told a story. Where they were from. What they liked. What they dreamed about. She made each person real. When she finished, another crew member played a song on some human instrument. The music was slow and sad. Many humans were crying. Even the tough-looking Marines had tears on their faces. Taemin didn't understand. The Veltharian way was to honor fallen warriors with stone monuments and silent respect. This public display of emotion seemed weak, but as he watched, he saw something else. The humans drew strength from their grief. They held each other. They shared their pain, and somehow that made them stronger. After the ceremony, Taemin found a quiet place and accessed the ship's data archives. He needed to understand what he had witnessed. The battle tactics made no sense by traditional standards. The humans had been outnumbered 75-1, yet they attacked without hesitation. He reviewed the battle recordings frame by frame. The more he watched, the more disturbed he became. The humans had calculated their chances of success. 23%. Less than 1 in 4. Yet they attacked anyway. Every action had been deliberate, designed to inflict maximum damage even at the cost of their own lives. The tactic with the debris field. The magnetic mines. The false retreat to draw enemies into a trap. Even Captain Song's final sacrifice had been calculated for maximum effect. These weren't the actions of brave warriors. These were the actions of something far more dangerous. The humans fought like they expected to lose, so they made sure losing cost the enemy dearly. Taemin began researching human history. The ship's archives had extensive files on Earth's past. What he found made his blood run cold. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. Thousands of years of continuous warfare. They had developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They had fought wars that lasted generations and killed millions. He found records of something called the Siege of Leningrad, a city surrounded by enemies for over 2 years. The humans inside ate anything they could find to survive. Hundreds of thousands died. But they didn't surrender. He found records of a battle at a place called Thermopylae. 300 soldiers held off an army of hundreds of thousands. They knew they would die. They died anyway, and their sacrifice saved their people. He found records of human nations developing nuclear weapons, bombs that could crack continents. And humans had built thousands of them, aimed at their own species, operating under a doctrine called mutually assured destruction. If anyone attacked, everyone died. And humans had lived under this threat for decades. What kind of species threatens itself with extinction as a defensive strategy? Crazy, isn't it? Taemin jumped. Heejin stood behind him, looking at his screen. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you," she said. "I saw you were researching our history. It's pretty dark." "Your people are insane," Taemin said. "You nearly destroyed yourselves dozens of times." "Yeah," Hyejin agreed, sitting down. "But we didn't, that's the important part. Every time we came close to extinction, we pulled back. We learned. We adapted. But why fight like this? Why take such terrible risks?" Hyejin was quiet for a moment. "Do you know where I'm from?" "Earth. Korea specifically. My grandmother lived through the resource wars. Most brutal conflict in human history. Billions died. She used to tell me stories about surviving." "What did she say?" "She said that humans don't have a survival instinct. We have a winning instinct. Animals survive. Humans conquer. When faced with extinction, we don't just try to survive. We try to make sure whatever's trying to kill us dies first." "That's terrifying." "Maybe. But it's also why we're still here. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years. Predators, diseases, ice ages, volcanic eruptions. Everything tried to kill us. And we're still here because we're too stupid or too stubborn to know when we're supposed to die." Taemin looked at the small human woman. She was smiling, but her eyes were serious. "The Ravagers are like that," Heejin continued. "They're an extinction-level threat. So humans respond with extinction-level determination. We'll burn the galaxy down before we let them make us extinct, and we'll make sure they burn with us." Before Taemin could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed. An automated voice announced emergency protocols. All military personnel report to briefing immediately. Priority Alpha. Taemin and Heejin rushed to the briefing room. Captain Jiwoo was already there, along with dozens of other human officers. A Veltharian admiral stood at the front of the room. Taemin recognized him immediately. Admiral Korthan, one of the highest-ranking officers in the Veltharian military. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," Korthan said. "We have a situation. Our intelligence has located the Ravager homeworld." A holographic map appeared showing a distant sector of space. "Combined fleet operations are being organized as we speak," Korthan continued. "Every allied species is contributing ships. Veltharian, Corthexian, Felorian, and human vessels. This will be the largest military operation in galactic history." "What's the objective?" Jiwoo asked. "Total elimination of the Ravager threat. We're not just pushing them back. We're ending them." Murmurs filled the room. This was unprecedented. Galactic species didn't fight wars of extinction. There were rules, customs, limits to warfare. "Admiral," a Veltharian officer said, "this violates the concordant of civilized warfare. We cannot engage in species elimination." "The Ravagers have consumed 17 worlds," Korthan said coldly. "They've killed billions. They don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They don't stop. The concordant doesn't apply to them because they're not a civilization. They're a plague." "When do we deploy?" Jiwoo asked. "The Indomitable will need 2 weeks of repairs. After that, you'll join the human fleet at staging point Zeta. The operation launches in 1 month." After the briefing, Taemin approached Admiral Korthan. "Sir, I request permission to remain with the human forces for the operation." "That was always the plan," Observer Taemin. "The High Command wants detailed reports on human combat doctrine. This operation will be the perfect opportunity." "With respect, Admiral, I'm not sure detailed observation is what we need." "Explain." "I've watched humans fight. I've studied their history. They don't fight like us. They don't follow rules. They don't care about honor or tradition. They fight to win whatever the cost. And I think we need to learn from them. Not just observe. Learn. Because if the Ravagers are an extinction threat, then we need to fight like humans. With everything we have. Without limits." Admiral Korthan studied him. "You sound like you've been changed by your time with them." "I have, sir. I've seen what humans are willing to do. What they're willing to sacrifice. And I understand now why the galaxy fears them. They're not afraid of death. They're afraid of failing to protect the people who depend on them." "Is that fear or determination?" "With humans, I think it's the same thing." Over the next 2 weeks, Taemin watched the Indomitable being rebuilt. Human engineers worked around the clock. They replaced damaged systems, upgraded weapons, reinforced the hull. The ship that emerged from the repair dock was stronger than before. But it was the crew that really changed. They trained constantly, practiced emergency procedures, ran combat simulations. They prepared for every possible disaster. Donghyun showed Taemin the human training philosophy. "We train for the worst possible scenario," he explained. "That way, when something bad happens, we've already practiced it. We've already died 100 times in simulation, so when it happens for real, we just follow the training." "You train to die? We train to survive dying. Big difference." Taemin joined some of the training exercises. He was shocked by how realistic they were. Simulated ship damage, fires, hull breaches, medical emergencies. The humans trained as if every simulation was real, and they never quit. Even when the simulation was impossible to win, they kept fighting until the very end. "Why train for scenarios you can't win?" Taemin asked Jiwoo. "Because sometimes the impossible scenario happens," she replied. "And when it does, I want my crew to know they can still fight. Still try. Still make a difference. Even if we can't win." The staging point was called Zeta Station, a massive military complex floating in deep space. Taemin had never seen so many warships in one place. Hundreds of vessels from 4 different species, all preparing for the largest military operation in galactic history. The Veltharian ships were elegant and powerful, their hulls decorated with honor markings from centuries of warfare. The Corthexian vessels were heavily armored fortresses, built to take punishment and keep fighting. The Felorian ships were fast and agile, designed for hit-and-run tactics. And then there were the human ships. old, patched, showing signs of countless repairs. But their crews moved with confidence and their weapons were always ready. Taman attended the joint command briefing in Zeta Station's main conference room. Representatives from all 4 species gathered around a massive holographic display showing the Ravager homeworld. Admiral Corthen spoke first. The Ravager homeworld is designated Target Prime. It's located in a dense asteroid field, heavily defended by automated weapons platforms and patrol fleets. Our intelligence estimates at least 2,000 Ravager vessels in the system. A Corthexian general gestured at the display. We propose a siege strategy. Surround the system, cut off supply lines, and wear them down over time. A Felorian commander shook her head. The Ravagers don't use supply lines like we do. They consume resources from the planets they take. Siege warfare won't work. Then we need a direct assault, Corthen said. Push through their defenses and strike at the home world itself. The casualties would be catastrophic, the Corthexian general protested. We could lose half our fleet in the first wave alone. The arguing continued. Each species had its own military doctrine, its own way of fighting. They couldn't agree on a strategy. Finally, Captain Jiwoo spoke. May I make a suggestion? The room fell silent. The human captain was the lowest-ranking officer present, but after the Battle of Colony Haven, everyone wanted to hear what she had to say. The problem is we're thinking like civilized species, Jiwoo said. We're trying to minimize casualties, preserve forces, fight according to established rules. The Ravagers don't care about any of that. They'll throw everything at us. What do you propose? Corthen asked. We use ourselves as bait. Human ships make the initial assault, draw the Ravager fleet out of position. While they're focused on us, the main Allied fleet hits them from multiple vectors. We don't try to minimize casualties. We accept them. Use them. You're talking about a suicide run, the Corthexian general said, horrified. I'm talking about winning, Jiwoo replied calmly. We can't beat the Ravagers by fighting fair. We beat them by fighting dirty, by being willing to pay prices they don't expect. Absolutely not, several officers said at once. We cannot ask human forces to sacrifice themselves. You're not asking, Jiwoo said. We're volunteering. This is what humans do. We take the impossible mission because someone has to, and we'd rather it be us than anyone else. The room erupted in argument. Some species found the idea barbaric. Others saw the tactical value but couldn't morally accept it. Admiral Corthen raised his hand for silence. Captain Jiwoo, I need to speak with you privately. Everyone else dismissed. We'll reconvene in 2 hours. Taman started to leave, but Corthen gestured for him to stay. You too, Observer. You've spent more time with the humans than anyone. When the room cleared, Corthen turned to Jiwoo. Are you serious about this? You're willing to send your people to certain death? Not certain death, Jiwoo corrected. Probable death. There's a difference. And yes, I'm serious. The human fleet commanders have already discussed this. We all agree. If this is what it takes to end the Ravagers, we'll do it. Why? Corthen asked. Why would you throw away your lives so easily? Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. Do you know how many extinction events Earth survived? 6. 6 times something tried to kill all life on our planet. Asteroid impacts, ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and somehow life kept coming back. Our ancestors survived because they were willing to do whatever it took. Hide in caves, eat anything, adapt to any environment. She paused, her eyes distant. That's what humans are, Admiral. We're the descendants of survivors. We've been facing extinction for millions of years, so when we see an actual extinction threat, we don't hesitate. We don't calculate acceptable losses. We just fight with everything we have because the alternative is dying anyway. Corthen looked at Taman. Do you agree with this assessment? Taman thought about everything he had witnessed. The Battle of Colony Haven. Captain Song ramming his dying ship into the enemy. The crew of the Indomitable singing as they prepared to die. Human history filled with impossible victories and last stands. Yes, Admiral. I think the captain is right. Humans don't fight battles. They fight wars, and they're willing to lose every battle if it means winning the war. This could change everything, Corthen said. If we adopt human tactics, we abandon centuries of military tradition. Rules of warfare, concepts of honor. With respect, Admiral, Taman said, the Ravagers already abandoned those rules. We're the only ones still following them, and it's getting us killed. 2 hours later, the briefing reconvened. Admiral Corthen stood at the front of the room, his expression grave. After careful consideration, I'm approving Captain Jiwoo's plan. The human fleet will make the initial assault on the Ravager homeworld. They will draw out the enemy fleet and hold them in place. The Allied fleet will then strike from multiple vectors, surrounding and destroying the Ravager forces. Protests erupted immediately. This is madness. We cannot send humans to die while we hide. This violates every principle of honorable warfare. This isn't about honor, Korthen roared, his voice silencing the room. This is about survival. The humans understand something we've forgotten. When faced with extinction, you do whatever it takes. You sacrifice whatever must be sacrificed. You become the monster you're fighting if that's what it takes to protect the innocent. He looked around the room. Any officer who cannot accept this should resign their commission now. I will not have hesitation or doubt when lives depend on split-second decisions. No one moved. Good, we launch in 48 hours. Dismissed. Over the next 2 days, Taemin watched the humans prepare. They didn't seem afraid. They were calm, focused, going through their pre-battle rituals. Some wrote letters to loved ones. Some prayed to various human gods. Some just quietly checked their equipment over and over. Donghyun found Taemin in the observation deck, looking out at the assembled fleet. Big day coming, the young human said. You know most of you won't survive this, Taemin said quietly. Yeah, we know. How can you be so calm? Donghyun sat down looking out at the stars. My great-grandfather fought in the resource wars. He was at the Battle of Neo-Seoul. 3 million soldiers on each side. It was hell. He told me once that the secret to facing death is knowing what you're dying for. He said dying is easy. Living with cowardice is hard. You're not afraid? I'm terrified. But I'm more afraid of failing. Of letting the Ravagers destroy another colony. Of knowing I could have made a difference but was too scared to try. Heejin joined them, carrying data pads, going over the battle plan again. Want to see? Taemin looked at the tactical display. The human fleet would jump directly into the Ravager system and immediately engage. No subtlety, no clever tactics, just a straight fight designed to get the Ravagers' attention. Once they commit their forces to fighting us, Heejin explained, they'll be vulnerable. The Allied fleet jumps in behind them and we have them surrounded. They'll be trapped between us and the main fleet. But you'll be trapped too, Taemin said, between the Ravagers and their homeworld defenses. That's why it has to be us, Hyojin said simply. Any other species would try to survive. Humans will stay in the fight even when survival is impossible. We'll hold that position until the Allied fleet finishes the job. Captain Jiwoo called a final crew meeting the night before launch. The entire crew of the Indomitable gathered in the main hangar bay. Jiwoo stood on a cargo container so everyone could see her. Tomorrow we're going into the biggest fight of our lives, she said. I won't lie to you. The odds are terrible. Command estimates 30% of human ships will be destroyed in the first hour. By the time this is over, most of us will probably be dead. She paused, looking at her crew. But here's what I want you to remember. Every second we hold that line is another second the Allied fleet has to position. Every Ravager ship we destroy is one less threat to the colonies. Every one of us who dies tomorrow does so buying time for billions of people to live in safety. That's what humans do. We take the impossible mission. We make the hard sacrifice. We stand in the gap between the innocent and the monsters, not because we want to die, but because we want others to live. Tomorrow, the Ravagers will learn what every enemy of humanity eventually learns. We don't surrender. We don't retreat. We don't quit. We fight until we win or until we're dead, and even then, our sacrifice will ensure the enemy remembers us forever. The crew stood and saluted. Then someone started singing. An old human song about soldiers and sacrifice. Soon the entire crew was singing, their voices echoing through the hangar bay. Taemin felt something break inside him. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into the Ravager home system. There was no subtlety, no attempt at stealth. They simply appeared and immediately opened fire. Taemin stood at his observer station, watching the tactical display with horrified fascination. The Ravager homeworld was surrounded by thousands of defensive platforms and ships. The moment the human fleet appeared, every Ravager vessel in the system turned toward them. Contact, Heejin called out. 2,300 Ravager vessels confirmed. Multiple classes. They're forming up to engage. All ships weapons free, Jiwoo ordered calmly. Remember the plan. Make them angry. Make them chase us. Hold the line until the Allied fleet arrives. The space between the human fleet and the Ravager forces filled with weapons fire. Energy beams, missiles, and bioplasma streaked back and forth. The first human ship took a hit within 30 seconds. Then another. Then a dozen more. But the humans didn't retreat. They pushed forward, firing constantly, drawing the Ravagers away from their defensive positions. "They're taking the bait," Heejin reported. 90% of the Ravager fleet is moving to engage us. The homeworld defenses are staying in place, but the mobile fleet is coming. "Perfect," Jiwoo said. "All ships fall back slowly. Make them think we're retreating. Lead them away from the planet." The human fleet began a fighting withdrawal, firing as they went. The Ravagers pursued eagerly, sensing victory. They outnumbered the humans 10-1. This should have been an easy fight. But the humans fought like nothing the Ravagers had faced before. Ships that should have retreated when damaged instead turned and rammed the enemy. Crews that should have evacuated instead stayed at their posts, fighting until their ships exploded around them. "Human destroyer eclipse is critical," someone reported. "They're requesting permission to disengage." "Permission denied," Jiwoo said, her voice hard. "Every ship stays in the fight, no matter what." Taemin watched the eclipse on the tactical display. The ship was burning, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches, but it kept firing, kept fighting, until finally it exploded in a ball of fire that took 3 Ravager cruisers with it. "Time until Allied fleet arrives?" Jiwoo asked. 17 minutes, Heejin replied. "Current fleet strength?" "We've lost 12 capital ships, 30 cruisers, and 42 destroyers. Remaining ships are all showing significant damage. They had been fighting for less than 20 minutes and already lost half their fleet. But the Ravagers had committed almost their entire force to the battle." The trap was set. The Indomitable shook as a bioplasma blast hit the shields. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in, shields down to 40%. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Weapon array 3 is offline. Fire and engineering." But Jiwoo's expression never changed. She watched the tactical display like a chess player seeing 10 moves ahead. "All ships tighten formation. Concentrate fire on the Ravager command ships. If we take out their coordination, the swarm becomes confused." The human fleet contracted, the ships moving closer together. Their combined fire focused on the largest Ravager vessels. One by one, the command ships exploded. And something strange started happening. The Ravager swarm's movements became erratic. They were used to fighting as one mind, coordinated by the command ships. Without that coordination, they became just a mob. "The Allied fleet is jumping in," Heejin announced. "ETA 2 minutes. All ships hold position," Jiwoo ordered. "Don't give them an inch." The fighting intensified. The Ravagers seemed to sense the trap closing. They threw everything at the human fleet, trying to break through before reinforcements arrived. Donghyun appeared on the bridge, his uniform torn and burned. "Engineering is gone, Captain. Reactor is critical. We've got maybe 5 minutes. Can you give me 7? Jiwoo asked. "I can give you 6.5, Donghyun said with a tired smile. He turned and ran back toward engineering. Taemin realized what was happening. The Indomitable was dying. But Jiwoo was going to keep it in the fight for every last second. "Contact! Allied fleet is arriving." On the tactical display, Taemin watched hundreds of new ships appear. Veltharian, Corthexian, and Felorian vessels, all arriving at once and immediately opening fire. The Ravagers found themselves trapped, the human fleet in front of them, the Allied fleet surrounding them, and the coordinated attack was devastating. "All human ships concentrate fire on the Ravager homeworld defenses," Jiwoo ordered. "We're opening a path for the Allied fleet." "Captain, we're falling apart," Heejin said. "Multiple systems failing. We need to evacuate." "After we finish the job," Jiwoo replied. The Indomitable, burning and broken, led the charge toward the Ravager homeworld. The few surviving human ships followed. They crashed through the defensive line, taking massive casualties but opening a gap. "Allied fleet, this is Captain Jiwoo. Path is clear. Strike now while you have the chance." Admiral Corthen's voice came over the comm. "Received, Captain. All Allied forces, attack formation. Target the homeworld." The Allied fleet surged through the gap the humans had created. Overwhelming firepower struck at the Ravager homeworld. The planet's shields failed. Its defensive platforms were destroyed. The surface began to burn. "That's it," Jiwoo said quietly. "That's the war. Hyojin, begin evacuation procedures. Get everyone off this ship." "What about you, Captain?" Heejin asked. I'll be right behind you. I need to make sure everyone gets off safely. The crew began abandoning ship. Taemin watched as humans calmly made their way to escape pods, helping wounded comrades, checking to make sure no one was left behind. Observer Taemin, Jiwoo said, you should evacuate. This isn't your fight anymore. I'm staying until you leave, Captain. Jiwoo smiled. Stubborn. You've been around humans too long. An explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. That was the reactor containment, Jiwoo said. We have maybe 2 minutes. Time to go. They ran through the corridor toward the last escape pod. Behind them, the ship was tearing itself apart. They could hear the groaning of metal, the roar of explosions, the screaming of alarms. They reached the escape pod. Jiwoo pushed Taemin inside, then turned back. What are you doing?
Taemin shouted.
I'm the captain. I leave last. Need to make sure Dong-hyun got out of engineering. He's dead already. The engineering section is gone. Then I'll confirm it. Go. Jiwoo slammed the pod controls. The door closed. Taemin pounded on the glass, shouting, but the pod was already ejecting. Through the pod's window, Taemin watched the Indomitable break apart. The reactor went critical. The explosion was like a small sun. But just before the explosion, another escape pod ejected. Then another. 3 pods escaped in the final seconds. The pods were picked up by a Veltharian rescue ship. Taemin stumbled out looking for Jiwoo. He found her being carried out on a stretcher, burned and bleeding but alive. Dong-hyun? She asked immediately. Present, Captain, came a voice. The young human was being carried on another stretcher, his legs badly burned. But he was smiling. Told you I could give you 6.5 minutes. You gave me 7, Jiwoo said. Overachiever. Heejin appeared, directing medical teams. She saw Jiwoo and Dong-hyun and visibly relaxed. Everyone made it off. We lost the ship, but the crew survived. Taemin looked out the window at the battle. It was ending. The Ravager fleet was destroyed. Their homeworld was burning. After months of terror, after losing so many colonies, the war was finally over. The Allied fleet had lost many ships. The casualties were in the thousands. But the humans had lost more than anyone. Of the 20 capital ships that started the battle, only 3 survived. 60% of the human fleet was destroyed, but they had won. 3 days later, Taemin stood in a ceremony hall on Zeta Station. The room was filled with officers from all 4 species. At the front, Admiral Korthen was presenting medals. When Jiwoo's name was called, she limped forward on crutches. The burns on her face and arms were still healing, but she stood straight and proud. Captain Jiwoo, Korthen said, for extraordinary courage and leadership in the face of overwhelming odds, for willingness to sacrifice everything to protect the innocent, and for demonstrating the true meaning of heroism, I present you with the Star of Valor, the highest military honor in the Veltharian collective. The room erupted in applause. Representatives from all species stood and saluted. Korthen pinned the medal on Jiwoo's uniform. Then he did something unexpected. He placed his hand over his heart in the Veltharian gesture of deepest respect. You showed us what we had forgotten, he said quietly. That honor without courage is worthless. That tradition without purpose is empty. That sometimes the greatest sacrifice is the only path to victory. When Taemin's name was called, he was surprised. He had only been an observer. Observer Taemin, Korthen said, for courage under fire, for standing with your allies when death was certain, and for being the bridge between our people and humanity, I present you with the Observer's Star. As Korthen pinned the medal on Taemin's uniform, he leaned close and whispered, Your report changed everything. The High Command is completely revising our military doctrine. We're learning from the humans. About determination.